I decided to work on some crocheted eyes a while ago. The intention was to incorporate this pattern into a garment of some kind, because I know eyes on clothes is a really popular thing. I'm sure the thing I made in this video will catch on too. So here's all the trouble I went to. First, I made some eyes with some scrap yarn. Unfortunately, the scrap yarn I used for the coloured part was blue and blue, so you can't clearly tell them apart. For this first one, I didn't stagger the increases, so it was hexagonal. Then I staggered the increases and got a circle. But I didn't like this one. This is quite nice, just the darker colours on the inner and outer rings. But I did more. This one has a dark outer ring only, and I worked into the back loop only. Then I did another. I don't know if this is better. I probably should have stopped at eye number 3. And this was done in preparation to make an eye out of other colours, more contrasting colours. I got this selection of little balls of cotton yarn, so I thought I could make eyes of all colours. But instead of crocheting them all to see what they'd look like, I took the colours of the yarns and digitally sampled what I thought was the colour that would best represent each yarn. I don't think I got it quite right. I drew eyes in the patterns that I thought I would use. I ended up not using any of these. And this was intended to save me time, but really it just took up a bit more of it. So next I began making a few different variations of eyes. For this particular garment, they had to be red. They were supposed to look imposing and otherworldly. This one didn't have enough contrast, so I frogged it. With all the colour changes, it wasn't as satisfying and straightforward. In fact, it didn't even sound like a frog. I tried green, but I didn't like it. Changed the outer ring colour. It looked even worse. Used these colours to make this? Nope. Tried a simpler version of the green one and the red one. Briefly considered stitching on details. I think this would actually produce the best look, but might be a bit bulky. Then I took them all apart. I was getting worried my lovely cotton yarn would start to become all fluffy from all the frogging, so I decided to plan these patterns in a different way. I made a grid. This grid took a long time to make. I really didn't want to make this grid by myself because it involved drawing loads of lines and rotating them. You can generate custom circular grids using free resources online, but none of the ones I found allowed you to change the number of sections in each subsequent ring. If you know of a grid generator that can do this, please let me know in the comments. This grid is not perfect. Not only is it not perfectly aligned, but I didn't take into account where I would be doing increases. So there is a slight shift in the actual placement of the colours in the real-life pattern. So I don't think this grid would be the best thing if you were trying to plan some kind of picture that went round in a circle, but for this approximate placement of patterns of colours, it's fine. I tested out a few different patterns on this grid and came up with these 4. I decided to make the bottom left one. Here it is in the fibre. It looks mostly the same. And I was tired of making eyes by this point, so I just went with it. It could definitely be better, but I think to get the look I really wanted, I would have to embroider it. Of course, one eye is not enough. This particular garment would need 2 eyes, so I made another. Once finished, it looked like this. It's a little domed, but that's okay. It is a desirable property for this particular project, and no one will ever see the ugly side. Just in case you want the pattern, this is the only part of the pattern for this whole thing that I wrote down. Do 5 rounds of your circle in black yarn, starting with 6 stitches. Then do oruri 6 times. Then you want to repeat yo-yo-yo-yo 7 times. Next, do 8 repeats of yoror. Then do or 9 times. Lastly, do a round of dark red. All right, now that I had these irises, I began working round them to complete the rest of the garment. Every eye needs the white part, so that's what I did next. And I slowly worked it into this rounded triangle shape. Not because eyes are triangular, but because I needed this to fit on this padded bra cup, because I'm turning these into a bra. I wanted to crochet the eye cover onto the cup, because I think that would best ensure the edges are completely covered. To prepare the cup for this procedure, I blanket stitched all around it. The number of blanket stitches doesn't have to be the same number of stitches in your crocheted piece. They just need to be small enough that they won't be too slack in any places, and they should anchor your cover to it securely. Next, I single crocheted the eye cover onto the cup. To help ensure the cover was lined up nicely, I pinned each corner to the cup first. Even though I prefer to use cotton to make garments, and this particular yarn is really soft and nice to wear, because it's untwisted, it's a bit of a pain to work with as the individual threads keep getting caught on my hook or slipping off it. But this is the yarn I chose to make the bra. Here is one finished cup. And here is the other. Unfortunately, the cups were not symmetrical, but the covers have stretched to fit them anyway. But asymmetry isn't necessarily a terrible thing. I made this strap, just a simple little strap, and I lined up the cups with where I wanted them to go. If you make a bra, I think the best thing to do is either model it off a bra that you already know fits you well, or put the strap on and mark where the cups should go with a stitch marker. Here I am making sure they're also an equal distance from the middle. I attached the cups to the strap. I think I single crocheted these on from the opposite side, but you could also slip stitch or whip stitch them on, which would give you a less bulky seam. Here is the gradual evolution of the bra as I added bits on it until it was complete. Although I would be far more likely to wear this as a crop top, I don't like wearing crocheted clothing that fits tightly. Crochet tends to not have a good stretch. Additionally, this is cotton yarn, so it's more prone to stretching over time. This garment will have to be treated with delicate care, otherwise it will become saggy. In anticipation of it sagging with age, I decided to make the straps adjustable. I'll show you how I did that a bit later. Every time I use this yarn, I get these annoying stray strands. It's all I see when I look at this. Some people recommend cutting them, but that doesn't sit well with me either. Anyway, now that this bra was pretty much done, it just needed a few other bits to complete it. First, I made a button. I have buttons already, but I think this deserved a button that suited the theme a bit better. So I modeled it in Blender. I used this image as a template, just so I could estimate the size of the holes relative to the overall size of the button. I wanted this button to look like an eye, because you can never have too many eyes on your eye-themed clothes. This button required some post-printing finishing in order to make it actually look like an eye. Sticking with the color scheme, I painted the iris of this eye button red. With cheap acrylic paints, I wouldn't recommend doing this. Be kind to yourself. Use better quality paints for things like this. Despite using these inferior paints, I built up enough layers that it looked okay in the end. Then I ruined it all with cheap UV resin. Really, you can only get away with a certain amount of cheaping out. So I've used UV resin before, and every UV resin I've used previously has never set properly. It leaves this sticky residue over the top after it has apparently cured. I heard that you can wipe this away with isopropyl alcohol, but this didn't work. I really should have tested this new bottle of resin before applying it to the button. But I was a fool. I didn't. My button was ruined. I was so disappointed I didn't even record the mess that was left. After ruining the only one button I wanted to make, I decided to make 3 buttons while I waited for my hopefully better bottle of UV resin to arrive in the post. I tried to recreate the one that I had just ruined, but maybe I was just feeling a bit more impatient while I was doing it because I applied layer after layer and it just didn't look right. Here's how it eventually turned out. There's a bit of gold on there to make it shine and sparkle. Then I did a gold eye. For the last one, I applied a thin coat of my new resin to the iris part of the button. After curing it, I applied some chrome powder to the surface. I missed a few places with the resin, so the edges were a bit patchy. Here's a closer look. So I touched up the edges with the gold paint. This is how it turned out. I gave them all a coat with my new UV resin that actually sets properly, and this is what they looked like. I only covered the iris part of the chrome and red buttons, but covered the whole surface of the gold button. Covering only the iris was a mistake, as you will see. I don't have any small drills, so I used a big one. Using a small one would have been better, as these buttons are delicate little things. The gold one turned out fine. The red one was chipped on one hole. I think it's because the hole was drilled right on the edge of the set resin, and I applied too much pressure when drilling. It was hard not to, the drill was a bit heavy, and the chrome one chipped on both holes. I patched them up. I could have covered the whole surface in resin, just as I did with the gold one. That would have given the best result, but I didn't want to drill more holes. These little dabs of resin didn't help all that much. So my red and chrome eyes are now suffering from lumpy conjunctivas. Thankfully, these imperfections should be less obvious once the button is finished. Now each of them needs a pupil. These aren't the exact same type of eye as the bra cup eyes. They're not human eyes, but still it's an eye. Just to make the pupil a little broader, I'm going through it 3 times. That is what it will look like once it's sewn on. The lumpy bit is less obvious now. I can still see it, but it's less obvious. And here are the others next to it. I don't have any plans for the chrome and gold ones. For this bra, I'll just be using this red one. It's going right here. Last of all, the straps need to be attached.
I'll show you, Mum.
I did up the main strap with the new button, then lined up the shoulder straps with it to see where they should go. I marked the anchor point with a stitch marker.
Can you make this one for me?
You want me to make you a bra?
Now, I bought these little strap accessories, but I don't think they're really the best thing for crocheted straps. They're probably best suited for sewing projects. The straps that I crocheted are soft and chunky. They don't fit well into these metal loops. I made a short section of strap to demonstrate the problem with it. It goes in fine initially, but then it has to go through again, which is a bit of a squeeze. You can see some of the threads have gone rogue from when I tried this earlier. And although you can't tell through this video, there is a lot of friction happening when I slide the strap through. The strap also slipped out of place when I first tried this. So I modeled a new slider and ring in Blender. I avoided doing this to begin with because I really feel metal is a far better material to use for this than plastic. I imagine the plastic will snap after enough use. The strap slider and ring in this new one are narrower to fit the strap better and to stop them from sliding out of place. And there's a little more room for 2 lengths of strap to fit between each space in the slider. But when I tested it, I still felt a lot of friction between the stitches and the slider. I imagined that over time the threads would fray, so I just made the hole a tiny bit bigger. Here's the final version. To add an adjustable strap, you just attach the rings to where you want your shoulder strap to attach to. As you can see, this was a tricky and fiddly procedure, with the individual strands getting caught and slipping off. If you use twisted yarn, it is much simpler. Then run the strap through the slider, then through the ring. Go back through the slider, then fold the end of the strap over itself and sew the loop securely. The strap fit through nicely, there was no excessive friction, and it was now fully adjustable. As I mentioned earlier, this is made from cotton yarn, so I expect that the fibers will stretch over time, and being able to adjust the shoulder straps will just help to extend its use for a bit longer. Here is the finished bra. I still haven't got rid of those stray strands that are poking out here and there. I did come up with a name for this piece, a rather long one. I believe that if Friedrich Nietzsche were alive today, he would approve. It is called, "If you gaze for long at my boobs gaze also at you." I suppose I should show you what it looks like being worn, but I'm too shy to model this. Here it is on the next best thing, my pillow. I made this to fit my own size, despite the fact that I would never dare to wear something like this out. I don't wear bikinis. I don't want to attract anybody's gaze towards my chest, really. I just thought this would be fun to make. It was. In fact, it was so much fun, I made another one which I'll never wear. This one was way quicker to make as I double crocheted it. And it has a different name. I was talking about this pattern with someone and they suggested a name for it to me, which I thought was really great. So this piece, which I'm afraid I also didn't write down the pattern for, is called "My Eyes Are Down Here." This one's made from acrylic yarn, so it's not going to feel great to wear. The purple yarn is called Baby Twinkle DK, but I wouldn't recommend you use this for anything that touches a baby's skin. The glittery strands in this thread are really pretty, but really scratchy. This is just a decorative work of art. It's not for wearing. It just looks like it's meant to be worn. I even made a new button for it. This one uses a little loop, so no need to drill buttonholes. So if you want to intimidate people with your unblinking boobs or something like that, maybe you could make something like this.